During a press conference on Tuesday, Prime Minister Mark Carney announced that an upcoming trade agreement with the United States is expected to involve certain tariffs remaining on Canadian goods.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has said Canada needs a reduction in net migration, with fewer immigrant arrivals than departures, to allow for Canada's infrastructure and services to catch up.
A BC man previously convicted of strangulation and uttering threats is now facing murder charges for a hammer attack on his estranged wife just hours after his release. Hello, Canada. It's Wednesday, July 16th, and this is the True North Daily Brief. I'm Cosmin, Dzsurdzsa.
And I'm Alex Zoltan.
We've got you covered with all the news you need to know. Let's discuss the top stories of the day and the True North exclusives you won't hear anywhere else. Prime Minister Mark Carney told the media on Tuesday that a new trade deal with the United States will likely include tariffs. Speaking in French ahead of a cabinet meeting in Ottawa focused on escalating trade tensions, Carney told reporters, quote, "There's not a lot of evidence right now that the U.S. will agree to a tariff-free deal," noting that Trump's prior agreements, including one with the United Kingdom, have tariff baselines, 10% in the UK's case. The comments come the same day new polling showed Canadians are divided on Carney's ability to secure a favorable agreement. The number of Canadians confident that the Prime Minister can deliver a new deal versus those who think he can't is almost split down the middle at 46% and 45%, respectively. Almost two-thirds, 63%, said the federal government should take a harder line in negotiations, while 37% preferred a softer approach. Carney did not say whether his government is prepared to accept tariffs in a final agreement, but emphasized that Canada is working to protect its national interests. The Prime Minister also pointed to Canada's almost free trade status under the Canada-US-Mexico agreement, though he acknowledged problems remain with ongoing sectoral tariffs applied by Washington on steel, aluminum, and automotive goods. The tariffs on sectors such as the Canadian automotive industry have been devastating, contributing to thousands of job losses as manufacturers shut down plants and, in some cases, prompting companies to relocate to the U.S. Last week, Trump announced his intention to increase the existing 25% border tariff to 35% on non-CUSMA compliant goods beginning in August. The U.S. administration has tied the move to Canada's handling of fentanyl trafficking and supply management in the dairy sector as major blockades to free trade. During the election, Mark Carney sold himself to Canadians as the ultimate crisis manager. He called himself the guy who saved two economies, who could negotiate under pressure and make business work for the average Canadian. And right now, I'm paraphrasing him directly during the Liberal leadership race when he was running to replace Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Now that we're staring down the barrel of a trade war with the United States, tariffs on key industries, and no clear wins at the table, Alex, do you think he's actually delivering the results Canadians elected him for? Because that's why a lot of people voted for him, or at least the image he presented. Or was that campaign pitch just smoke and mirrors?
Well, despite the promise to stand up to Trump's economic bullying, as Mark Carney would put it, the actual economic pressure from American tariffs remains largely unrelieved. Specifically, U.S. tariffs on Canadian auto, aluminum, and steel remain in force as of today, with no rollback commitments from Washington. Canadian manufacturers, particularly in Ontario and Quebec, have reported surging costs, as you had mentioned, layoffs, and frozen investment plans, directly contradicting Carney's promise to shield Canadian workers from Trump's tariffs. The Canadian Chamber of Commerce and Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association have also warned that the retaliatory tariffs are not having the desired deterrent effect. It may actually be entrenching a trade war that Canada probably can't win. So I would say that Carney's pledged plan for a dollar for dollar, pain for pain strategy in reality is just not materially shifting U.S. trade policy. And Trump has, if anything, doubled down, threatening additional tariffs on Canadian lumber, EV batteries, and even food. He is also, Donald Trump, continued to take aim at Canada for what he perceives as its inaction on the fentanyl issue, and has also now brought up another issue, which is the 400%, as he calls it, dairy tariffs above quota. And so I would say that in terms of ending the crisis, Carney has not delivered on his promise. And I think that he may even be making it worse. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre said Canada needs fewer immigrants to come into the country than are leaving for the next couple of years until Canada's infrastructure and services can keep up with the increased demand. While in Ottawa discussing Prime Minister Mark Carney's recently released ethics disclosure, Poilievre clarified what he means when he's previously called to limit population growth over the next couple of years. He noted that the millions of individuals whose study or work visas are set to expire in the next couple of years are set to leave and that many will.
Hi, Mr. Poilievre. So, Paul Dutch, Global News. You previously called for severe limits to population growth in Canada. Can you clarify what you mean by that?
So, first of all, I'll tell you what I don't mean, which is natural population growth. That is almost non-existent in Canada. We have roughly the same number of people who die as who are born. So all of our population growth, in fact, in the last quarter, I think there were more deaths than births. So what I am referring to is migration, net migration. We have millions of people whose permits will expire over the next couple of years, and many of them will leave. We need to ensure that more leave than come in over the next couple of years while we catch up. Well, housing, healthcare, and jobs can catch up. We've had population growth of roughly 1 million a year under the Liberals, while we barely build 200,000 homes. Our job market is stalled, and yet we're adding more people to the workforce. Our young people are facing generational highs in unemployment because the multinational corporations are giving jobs to low-wage temporary foreign workers and that ultimately leave our young people without opportunities. Our country is divided, and we're not able to integrate people at this pace. So in order to fix the problem, we've got to we need to put very hard caps on immigration levels. We need more people leaving than coming for the next couple of years, and so our country can actually catch up. Our immigration policy should invite the right people in the right numbers in a way that puts Canada and Canadians first.
He noted generational highs in unemployment for Canada's youth and student population as jobs, particularly for multinational companies, are being given away to low-wage temporary foreign workers. He noted that more people should be leaving Canada than arriving for the next couple of years so that Canada can actually catch up. Poilievre's pledged to learn from the mistakes of the previous election, but affirmed that his party remains committed to the same vision of Canada that he outlined during the election. Cosmin, in your opinion, where is immigration at currently in Canada? And have any Liberal policy reversals fixed the situation or alleviated some of the concerns that Pierre Poilievre addressed in his recent press conference?
Alex, we've got to give credit where it's due. There has been some stabilization, and that's mainly thanks to the federal cap on student visas and some of the restrictions applied on temporary resident status. In fact, Statistics Canada reported that from January to April of this year, Canada's population grew by just 20,000 people, which is basically flat growth when you compare it to how many people the population lost. And it's not a coincidence. Immigration inflows slowed down, more temporary residents left, and most new permanent residents were already living here. And we're already seeing the benefits of that pause. In June, average rent in Canada actually fell by 2.7%. And the Canadian Mortgage Housing Corporation said the immigration cap played a role in cooling housing demand. So obviously, there are already benefits showing. On top of that, the conference board, we just put out an article about this the other day, said that cuts are helping boost wages after years of the legacy media and politicians insisting that it was a conspiracy theory. It was a myth that high immigration levels were depressing wages. Here we have the conference board saying that cuts to immigration levels are actually helping boost domestic wages. And it's obvious. It's because employers can't rely as heavily on cheap foreign labor, and they actually have to offer competitive wages to attract people here domestically to these jobs. So yes, some policy reversals have had a real positive impact, but let's not kid ourselves, Alex, because it's not enough, and it likely won't be unless it's sustained in the long term. The damage from years of runaway immigration targets set by the Trudeau government has been untold. There's sky high rents, overburdened services, wages get depressed, and that doesn't get fixed overnight. So sensible immigration policy helps ordinary Canadians. We're seeing it help people at a very real level. And what we had before helped multinational corporations, not the average person. So we just need to stay the course. James Edward Plover, previously convicted of strangulation and uttering threats, is now accused of murdering his estranged wife in a broad daylight hammer attack, just hours after being released from custody. According to police, two women were returning from their lunch break on the afternoon of July 4th when the suspect allegedly attacked and beat both of them with a hammer in a busy Kelowna, British Columbia parking lot. True North has confirmed through community sources that Bailey McCourt, mother of two, was one of the victims. She tragically died from her injuries sustained in the attack. Plover was arrested and charged with second-degree murder in connection with the attack. Court records show that the 45-year-old had already been convicted of choking and making threats against an intimate partner. He was released just hours before Friday's deadly assault. It was not Plover's first run-in with the law. The BC Prosecution Service said he was initially charged in June 2024 with intimate partner violence. He was released on $500 bail. Prosecutors described as, quote, extensive protective conditions. He was later charged with 2 additional counts of uttering threats. Last week, Plover was convicted of multiple offenses. However, due to a publication ban, the identity of the victim in that earlier case cannot be confirmed, leaving it unclear whether the woman he strangled is the same woman he is now accused of killing. Despite his history of repeat offenses, particularly related to intimate partner violence, Plover was released pending a feature sentencing hearing. His release, followed just hours later by the fatal assault, has stunned the Kelowna community. So, Alex, you're our top crime reporter, and you've got your finger on the pulse when it comes to what's happening across the country in the courts, but especially in British Columbia where you're posted. So how big of an issue is this in BC? Just how often are we seeing violent repeat offenders like Mr. Plover here getting out on bail and reoffending to such a tragic degree?
Well, in terms of how often, Cosmin, it's virtually daily. There is a story out of BC, quite literally almost every day, of a repeat violent offender committing crimes. On the issue of bail specifically, we're actually, perhaps you could say, a little bit lucky in BC in the sense that BC prosecution services are unique in Canada in that they actually record and make public data on bail hearings. About 6 months ago, True North reached out to the Department of Justice federally and were asking if they had any bail data. They actually shockingly do not. So the federal government is in charge of making amendments to the criminal code, including bail reform, and they don't even have the data to track the efficacy of their results. But in BC, we do have that data, and the data is frankly shocking. So in 2022, for instance, Crown sought detention in 196 of 779 hearings. That's only 25%. And in 425 bail hearings involving a suspect accused of a violent crime and already with a bail breach on their file, the Crown only sought detention orders in 52% of the cases. So not only are we allowing people out on bail I would argue excessively, particularly violent offenders. Repeat violent offenders who have a history of breaching bail are only being detained roughly half of the time. So I would say that this is a major issue, and it continues to be a major public issue in British Columbia. But of course, it's not just unique to British Columbia. The issue seems to be fairly endemic and persistent across the country.
That's it for today, folks. Thanks for tuning in. You can stay on top of new episodes every weekday by subscribing to the Daily Brief on iTunes and Spotify. Also, while you're at it, make sure to hit us with a 5-star rating and please leave a review.